Hello, everybody, and welcome to our fourth ever session of the Woke Lab. And this session, I have to tell you guys, I think this is the session that I have been most anticipating. And given everything that's happening in the world and in the news right now, I don't even need to speak of it because I know that you feel it and you know it, and that's why you're here. I think this conversation that we're having today is more important than anything else that we can be talking about right now. And that is how to defy white supremacy in all of our lives so that we can find true freedom in every way, in every part of our lives, to live in the full power and presence and purpose of who we are. And I could not be more honored and more thankful and grateful to have Layla Saad with me here today. Layla Saad is here. Everybody give it up for Layla. Yes, hello, Layla. And I'm going to formally introduce you guys to Layla, but I want to put a little something on the screen for you right now. So if y'all can see that, this is, oh, I just had a little issue with my thing. There we go. So here's Layla and her book, which is absolutely incredible, called Me and White Supremacy. And Layla Saad is an author and a speaker and a teacher and a podcast host on the incredibly important topics of race and identity and leadership and personal transformation and social change. And her book, Me and White Supremacy, and the subtitle, which I love even more just as much, is Combat Racism, Change the World, and Become a Good Ancestor. And this book is officially, I need you guys to listen to me here, a New York Times bestseller, a USA Today bestseller, a Wall Street Journal bestseller, and an Amazon bestseller. And this particular work that she's doing started as a 28-day free Instagram challenge that then blew up and turned into a national movement and a workbook with over 100,000 people downloading her digital workbook. And she is here with us to share live today, coming in from Qatar. So it's nighttime where she's at, right? And Layla, you can go ahead and unmute yourself now and say hello,
Yes.
hello, hello.
Hello. Hi, Justin. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And this is the first time for me being on a Zoom call with everyone here, like seeing everyone's faces and stuff. So I'm excited for the conversation. And Justin, you and I were talking right before we came into the main room, and you've told me how incredible the entire series has been this week. So I feel really honored to be speaking at this portion of the series, and I know we're going to have an incredible conversation. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Layla. And you know what I want to say to all of you right now, and this is why it's so important, why it was essential to me as we started this, that we could all see each other and that we could all be here. And I invite you, those of you watching, to even just swipe through for a moment and see all the faces and see all the genders and identities and colors and ages and bodies and shapes and sizes, and just take a look at this community that we are building and be proud of this, because this is the world that we want, of us coming together. And I want to say that this conversation that we're having today, right now, is revolutionary. It is healing ancestral lines backwards and forwards. The fact that we are talking about white supremacy and having an open, heart-centered conversation about this with all of us together. This might be the first time, the first era in history where a conversation like this is possible, especially because we're digitally on Zoom with people coming in, as I saw you guys tapping in, all the way from the UK to Alabama to Houston to San Diego and beyond. So we welcome you and we honor you. And a couple things as we get in, I just want to tell you guys, because I know there's a lot of new people here today, is one of the things that we do here in our community. When you hear Layla or me or anybody else say something that you relate to, that you're like, yes, where you want to give it like an amen or like a clap or something like that, what we do in our community is we rub our hands together like this and we juice it up with some love. So if you see somebody or you hear something that you love, just put your hands in the camera and shake them up so that we know that you're giving people that kind of moment of praise and connection. And I want to tell you guys a little story before we get started and jump into this. And this is a story that I haven't told too often, but it's in my book. So I grew up with such an interesting story around race. So my mom, who's actually on this call, Mom, unmute yourself and say hi if you want so everybody can see you for a second.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, so that's my mama,
Hi,
everybody.
Mom.
Mom, and I actually put makeup on today because my son blasted me out yesterday that I didn't have makeup.
I said it was good that you didn't have makeup on. That's what I said. I was proud of you.
That's not what she heard. She heard something else.
I said I was proud of you.
I'm so excited to hear all you have to say. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. So that's my mother. And I grew up with such an interesting situation around race because my mom was adopted when she was first born, just a couple days after she was born. And my grandparents who adopted my grandmother is Italian and my grandfather is Spanish. And so these Italian and Spanish family adopt my mom and they're told that my mom is Mexican. Okay, so my dad's Black and my mom and dad get together. And when my mom and dad get married or choose to get married, it broke our entire family apart. My grandmother has 9 brothers and sisters, 4 of whom I have never met because when my mom chose to be with a Black man, they said, we're never speaking to the family again. And to the point where they didn't even go to each other's funerals when they passed away. That's the level of grudge that was held in the white supremacy in my actual family. But then the other half of the family was loving and open and joyful. And if you guys saw a picture, maybe I'll find one while we're talking, of my family. It's like me and like blonde hair, blue-eyed kids, and those are all my cousins. And so I grew up loving and connecting, and my grandpa and my grandmother is white. And then on my dad's side, everyone's Black. And there was this beautiful blended family and connection. And then this funny thing happened. So about 7 years ago, for my mom's birthday, I decided that I wanted to take her out of the country for the first time because she had never been out of the country. And because she was adopted, I said, how amazing if we get an ancestry DNA test and I could take you to Mexico, to the place in Mexico where your family is originally from, so you can see a little bit more about your heritage. And we do the ancestry DNA test and find out that my mom is actually Persian and Middle Eastern and not Mexican at all. Now, this was a huge blow up in our entire identity because literally my screen name on AOL Instant Messenger when I was growing up was Blaxican Boy 22. Y yo hablo español también, fluente, casi fluente, todo. And so this was like a huge blow up in my identity. But what it showed me and taught me was how much culture is learned. How much culture is learned, how much we can learn about other cultures, because my mom and me and anybody not being Mexican at all, I've been in more quinceañeras than more Mexican people. You know what I mean? I mean, there's so much that we can learn about one another. And so today's conversation and what's going to happen today, it may bring up some things for you that need to be undone. It may unearth some emotions for you that you haven't had to feel or deal with before. It may break free. It may break the patterns that you've been dealing with in the past. And I invite you to just open and invite yourself forward into all of it, because you're in the embrace of Layla Saad, who is one of the leaders of this and holds this conversation with such integrity and such love. But I'm just going to tell y'all, this ain't easy work. This ain't tiptoeing through the tulips, like my grandma used to say. So, Layla, with all of that, I just thank you and I love you and I honor you for being here. And I would love to just start by asking you, first of all, why this work? Why this work? Why have you devoted your life to this work?
First of all, I want to say thank you for sharing that story. I've been working on some things. I'm on sabbatical at the minute, but I've been working on some things behind the scenes as I look at where I'm being called to move to next, now that me and white supremacy is out in the world and it's doing what it's doing. Where's God leading me next? And I've been building, I said to one of my friends today, I said, I've been building a digital online ancestors altar to remind me of why it is that I do the work that I do. And I pulled in pictures of my my grandparents and my parents, my children, my siblings, my husband, and I'm basically curating the space to remind me why it is I'm doing what I'm doing, because this work is really hard. It's very challenging. It's very heartbreaking, especially right now with what we're seeing in the news, although it's sadly another news cycle that starts all over again. And it's in moments like this that I used to ask myself, this is so hard. Why am I doing this again? I could be going back to what I was doing before, which was life coaching, just doing spiritual work and not talking about race. But the reason why I do this work is because I am a Black woman, I'm a Black wife, I'm a Black daughter, I'm a Black mother, I'm a Black aunt, I'm a Black sister, I'm a Black friend. And being Black means something in this world because of what white supremacy has defined it to mean. And when I see Black people and people of color and other melanated peoples who are oppressed, harmed, discriminated against, and killed because of the color of our skin, it's always a reminder to me that they may be living half a world away from me, but the reason they're in that position is because they look like me. And so I can't disconnect myself from that. I can't shut myself off from that. And I was called to this work in 2017 when the Unite the Right rally happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I saw the images at that rally with the men marching in the streets with their torches. And there was this instant realization of, the hatred I'm seeing in their eyes is directed at people who look like me. And it sparked me to writing, and I wrote an article called I Need to Talk to Spiritual White Women about white supremacy. And I was having conversations online every day, and it led to then doing Me and White Supremacy and other works. But really, I've had to answer that question for myself. The exact same question you just asked me, I had to ask it to myself because it's really hard, tough work. And it's not work that all Black people are required to do. It's not our job to educate white people and people with white privilege as to our humanity and as to the harm that they're doing. It's not our job. Our job is to live and be free and experience joy and abundance and peace and safety and success and all of these amazing things. But white supremacy will remind us again and again and again, no, we're gonna limit your ability to do that. And throughout history, there have been people who are called in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of spaces, whether it's in their families, their local communities, or internationally, to speak on these issues, to do the educational work, to do the activism work, to do the calling out and the calling in work so that we can move things forward. I didn't think that this would be the work that I would be doing. It's not work that I chose.
It works? That's how it works.
I didn't choose it. I'm gonna tell you this right up front. If I had a choice, this would not be the choosing, but I did make the choice to say yes to the work. Yeah.
Yes. Amen. And you know, one of the things, because I know there's a lot of people here who've been deeply embedded in this work, and there's also a lot of people who are first time coming into this conversation. So for the sake of being clear and defining it very clearly for everybody, when you're saying white supremacy, what exactly are you speaking of?
Yeah. So for people who are new to this conversation, their first idea is usually the white supremacists are the men marching in the streets of Charlottesville with the torches, and they don't see themselves in that. They wouldn't do that. That's not an ideology that they subscribe to. But white supremacy is not just a chosen ideology. It's actually the air that we're breathing. It's the soil that we are rooted in, and that we grow up in, and that we live in. White supremacy is based on an ideology that says that people who are white or who look white are superior to people of all other races, and therefore they deserve to dominate over people of other races. But it doesn't just start with that ideology. It's an ideology that's used to create power and dominance and privilege, so that people who are white get to privilege and get to have power and get to exist in the world in a way that is safer and that is more easier than people of color and Black people and Indigenous people. And it operates at multiple layers. It operates, yes, as a kind of mindset and a kind of like an unconscious kind of thinking, but it's also institutional, it's also systemic, it's also historical. It operates at all of these layers. It has operated for many centuries. And so when people hear the word, they're like, well, I don't opt into that. That's not something that I believe in. That's not something that I choose to be a part of. So why are you calling me into this conversation? Because this has nothing to do with me. And a little digging into history will show you that you may not have created it, but you were born into it, that your very existence is based on it. And that goes for everyone. That's for all of us. I'm not just saying white people are impacted by it and the rest of us don't. We're all affected by it. And this is
One of the
case
things that I've heard you say, Layla, and sorry to interrupt, but one of the things that I've heard you say that I absolutely love is that even though you didn't create it, people are like, well, I don't do this, but you have been benefiting from it
you
the entire time. Yeah.
You benefit from it, and you sustain it without you even realizing. And the sustaining comes from silence, being silent in the face of racism, being sort of doing racial microaggressions against Black people, Indigenous people, people of color. You know, are you really sure that's what happened? Are you really sure it was racism? We shouldn't talk about racism, it's divisive. I don't believe in seeing color, I don't see color. Things like that actually maintain, it maintains the power structure, because if we can't look at color, and we can't look at the fact that, yes, there is only one human race. Biologically, there is only one human race. There is no such thing as different races of people with different biological makeups. But socially, the social construct of race, the idea that there are Black people and white people and people of color, and that is very real. And that there is meaning attached to what each race is socially constructed to be like. There are stereotypes and there are ideas about superiority and inferiority that play out in very, very real ways.
So I would love to, just for a moment, just have you talk about some of the ways that seem common, but maybe unexpected that this shows up for people. Because I know one of the things that I've heard you say, Layla, often is that the people who this work is for are the people who think that this work isn't for them, because they're not the people out marching on the street and they're not the people out doing that. But the people who, well, I'll actually let you speak to that. So who is this work for? And then also, in what ways, even for the woke people and the spiritual people and the people who are on this call who want change and justice, how does white supremacy show up in our lives in ways that might be sneaky that we're not even recognizing?
I mean, Martin Luther King spoke on this, right? The white moderate. When somebody, who was I talking to recently? And we said, well, you know what? I'm not even worried about the men marching in the streets in Charlottesville. I'm not dealing with them. I'm dealing with my colleague at work. I'm dealing with the person who's been my best friend all these years. I'm dealing with the person who's a part of my family who won't look at this. I'm dealing with the person who's in the business group that I'm in, or the spiritual group that I'm in, or the church that I'm in, who refuses to look at how they are a part of this as well. And therefore, because they refuse to look at it, do harm. Right? Anything that we're unconscious of, anything that we refuse to look at, it controls us. And we end up showing it up in these ways that don't match up with our consciously stated values. Consciously stated, a lot of, people who would describe themselves as liberal or progressive would say, I'm not racist. I'm totally not racist. I don't believe in the idea of racial superiority. I don't even see color, as we've just said.
There's a lot of that happening in the chat box right now. People were saying, wait, so saying I don't see color isn't good? You know, so there's some learning happening here as well. Yeah.
And we can, and what I will say to that is that in my book, Me and White Supremacy, there is a whole day on color blindness and why color blindness is harmful. So I won't go into teaching here. I'll just say that I have addressed it in my work. But when you are, I'm going to give an example because I don't want to talk sort of theoretically. I want to talk in lived examples, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
I think that makes it easier for people. So recently, a couple of weeks ago, I posted something on my Instagram asking Black, Indigenous people of color, what would you like the white colleagues at your work to know about how they can show up in anti-racist practice and anti-racist allyship towards you? And there were so many people who showed up to that thread and said things like, I want my white colleagues to know that they can't touch my hair. I want my white colleagues to stop asking me, where am I really from? I want my white colleagues to stop saying how articulate I am. I want my white colleagues to stop stealing my ideas and then presenting them as their own. I want my white colleagues, when I say something racist happened to me, that they don't say, yeah, but something like that happened to me too, so it's not really racism, right? These small daily interactions that you just think are meaningless are that death by 1,000 paper cuts, of ways in which we're reminded again and again that it is white people who get to set the tone of what the standard is and what is correct, and the rest of us have to maneuver ourselves around it.
Yeah.
So another huge one is how particularly Black women at work have to really watch the way in which they talk, because a stereotype that we get painted with very quickly is the angry Black woman. Right. And so anytime you show any kind of emotion or passion about something that's happened, it's, oh, why are you being difficult? Why are you being challenging? You know, and so you learn to bite your tongue. And I was speaking to my husband earlier, and I was saying to him about the fact that I'm off social media at the minute, but I popped on last night, it would have been last night my time, to share something, and then sort of just read a bunch of stuff and then popped off. And today I'm exhausted from it. And I said to him, white supremacy kills people, yes, through you know, what we're seeing in the news right now with George Floyd and things of that nature, Christian Cooper, but it's also the exhaustion of having to navigate white people's fragility and confusion and shock and upset and but where do I start and what do I do, and please explain it to me. That is an exhaustion which kills you slowly over time.
Yeah. And I can just say, like, I know a lot of people feel this way, and it's good. It's coming from a good intention, which I understand.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
when everything was happening and starting to happen again, I was getting all these phone calls. Oh my God. And somebody called me crying, saying, I'm so upset. A white woman called me crying. I'm so upset about what's going on. I'm so sorry this is happening for you. I'm like, me hearing you cry right now
It's
is
not helpful to me.
upsetting me.
Right.
This is not helpful.
Right.
Do not cry to me.
Right.
Call another white woman and cry to them. Like, I'm already
Right.
so upset. And like, now I have to like pet you while I'm trying to deal with this inside of myself. But people don't even recognize that's not a good thing to do, you know, or what can I do to help? I don't know. You know, like,
Right.
if I knew.
And this is the thing, there's a difference between Justin's work and my work. My work is to think, okay, what is the thing that I can create to help people do the work? That's not Justin's work.
No.
And not every person who is a Black person, Indigenous person, a person of color, that this is their work, that they're thinking about they're not waking up every day and thinking, how can I help white people understand? You know, Justin is here, and I have his book, which I love. I love this book.
Where's your book? Hold up your book too. You have them together as twins.
My book is here, and I love this book. And his work is about meditation and mindfulness. His work is not about anti-racism education.
No,
and
I'm
so
total student to this work
right.
as well. Just like everybody else here, I'm a total student. Yeah.
And so when the white people in Justin's life and in other Black Indigenous people's lives who are not anti-racism educators are having to field DMs and phone calls and comments where white people are crying and asking, what can I do? I mean, it's really centering how you feel as a white person and not thinking about how is the news affecting Justin as a Black man. How is the news affecting him?
Yeah.
And so this is something that I talk about called white centering, where every situation becomes about how does this relate to me as a white person? And consciously, you're not thinking that. You're not thinking, how does this relate to me as a white person? But the layers of conditioning of white supremacy has meant that you are often used to seeing the world from a white perspective and not from anyone else's. And that you would like the rest of us to also see it from your perspective and not from our own.
Yeah.
And so when you take Justin or anybody else out of their own pain and say, come and attend to mine, what you're saying is my feelings matter more than yours. Even in this moment of racial stress, my feelings matter more than yours.
So one of the questions that I want to just speak to very directly here, Layla, with the mixed group of people that we have here is, how does this work in doing the work of dismantling white supremacy in our lives and in the world show up differently for Black, Indigenous people of color as it shows up for white people? Like, where is the difference in the work that needs to be done in our lives?
Yeah, this is a great question, because actually all of us are conditioned into white supremacy and the idea that white is the standard and is the norm and the rest of us are other. But the work is entirely different. Black, Indigenous people of color for centuries, so people who exist now, but also their ancestors and their ancestors' ancestors, have been conditioned to live in a way where we defer to white people as the superior people, and have been conditioned to make ourselves smaller and to serve and to say, and to minimize our needs and our wants. And so the work that we do as Black, Indigenous people of color, including me, who is also an anti-racism educator, our work is to learn to live free with our full humanity. Our work is to learn to really honor our self-care and our joy and our abundance. Our work is to learn how to separate ourselves, to learn, my mentor before, she would say, you have to accept that, she said, I accept that I live in the collective universe, but I also live in my individual personal universe. So in the collective universe, which is based on dominant culture of white supremacy, the collective universe says, I am inferior because I'm a Black woman. But my personal universe says I'm a whole human being. And there is nobody who is superior to me, and I am not superior to anybody else. And so nobody can pull me out of my power because I live in my personal universe. I accept that there is a collective universe, but I live in my personal universe. And that is healing work that needs to be done, because we don't realize the ways in which we make ourselves smaller. You know, we make ourselves smaller by code switching. We make ourselves smaller by biting our tongue. We make ourselves smaller by not prioritizing our self-care. We make ourselves smaller when we start thinking, even though I'm not an anti-racism teacher, it's actually my job to go educate white people. We make ourselves smaller in all kinds of ways because that's what we've always been used to. And so the healing work that we need to do is actually just to show up in our full humanity, to prioritize our rest, our love, our self-care, our joy, and not wait for white people to give us our humanity or recognize our humanity. Yes, to recognize we're already whole. And, you know, the work that I'm doing is about the dismantling of white supremacy, but it's also about the building of the new world in which white supremacy doesn't exist. And a world in which white supremacy doesn't exist is a world in which every single person of every single race gets to live in the freedom of their full humanity. So yes, it's my belief that we can't wait for the, am I here?
Yeah, you're still here. You're back.
Okay,
you're back.
Okay, good. It's my belief that we cannot wait for the dismantling of white supremacy in order to live from that place. Because if I wait for that, I'll be I will die and white supremacy will still be here. Yeah. That is something that I have come to accept, to understand. It is what it is, right? This has been in place for centuries. It will continue to be in place for centuries. So I can't wait and say, I'm not going to be joyful and happy and whole until this thing is over. I have to live now as if that world already exists. I have to live it within myself. And so that's the work Black, Indigenous people of color, I believe that we have to do. And also addressing our own internalized anti-Blackness and our own internalized ideas of inferiority, right? And how that shows up in internalized oppression. When it comes to white people.
I just want to say something really quick, Layla, this is such a beautiful moment of why I love being in collaboration with you, because this is exactly the point what you just spoke of is exactly where our work intersects,
Mm-hmm.
is that place of here's the work that we're doing to dismantle white supremacy, and then here's the internal work that we're doing, which is, you know, more of what my work is, of experiencing and expressing our full capacity of authenticity and freedom and joy and love and going inward and meditation. And this is why all of us together and all the different tools that we're bringing are so important for the liberation of all people, for all of us to understand, you know, together. And why I think having this conversation and having white people hear what Black, Indigenous people of color need to be doing and vice versa is so important, because now we're having an understanding of the work that each other are actually supposed to be doing to help heal and create this better world together, because we're playing different roles. So onward with the other side. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I love that you said that, because one of the things that I'm really clear on in the way that I use my Instagram account is that, yes, I do share kind of like very clearly educative, like posts, right? Where I'm teaching you about something, or we're doing a live stream about something, but also I share about my joy and my love and my happiness and my silliness, because that's an education too.
Yeah.
That is an education for all people of all races, to see that just because I do this heavy work and just because we are in the time that we're in, doesn't mean that I'm going to be living in pain and fear and trauma and grief and anger 24/7. I will die very early if I do that. And I deserve a full, beautiful life.
Yes. Yes, sister. I'm with you. That's why I posted myself doing Britney Spears choreography on Instagram the other day. Just like, I'm living, you know what I mean? Just living.
Yes. Yes. So that's an education too. And then for people who have white privilege, the work is, first of all, the work is your personal anti-racism work. Right. So we talked about how white supremacy exists on multiple levels. And oftentimes people want to look outwards and see, okay, so what can I do out there? Like, what protests do I need to go to, or what petition do I need to sign, or what non-profit do I need to donate money to? And sort of, it's an easy thing to do because you just show up and you take the action, but you never stop to address what's actually inside.
Yeah.
Right. And there's that, what's that horror movie where it's like the woman keeps getting phone calls, and then it turns out the stranger's inside the house. The call is coming from inside the house.
Oh yeah, that one. I don't remember what it's called. Somebody will remember here in the chat box though.
Yeah. The white supremacy is inside
Scream,
the house.
it's called.
Scream,
okay.
Right. I don't watch horror movies, so I just know that scene exists. Yeah. Right. I have an overactive imagination, so I can't watch horror movies. But the white supremacy is inside the house. It's not there that you need to be looking first. It's inside. How do I participate in this system, in this ideology, in this dominant culture? Looking not just now, but throughout your lifetime, thinking about all the moments throughout your life where your life was different because you were white, that you were having a different experience because you were white. And then even taking it further back than that, thinking about your family and people who look like you in your country. How was their experience different because they were white? And how does that now affect you in 2020? What are you able to do because of what those ancestors did and what they created? How are you now able to live? Right? And so that work, if you were to just spend a lifetime doing that work, that would still not, it would still not be enough, right? Because it's so deep and there's so many layers to it. But it's important to start there. And in Me and White Supremacy, I do lay out a process for looking at different areas of how anti-racism shows up in your life. If we look at things like white privilege and white fragility and tone policing and cultural appropriation and white centering and all of these different ways that it shows up. And that's the work to do within yourself. But the reason why I say start there is because if you don't start there and you just start taking the actions outwardly, two things happen. Firstly, what you're most often doing is white saviorism.
Hello. Yes.
Right? So this idea that racism is a problem that is inherent to Black and brown people, And as the benevolent and kind, nice white person, you are doing the right thing by helping them. Right? That sounds like a good thing. No, because it ignores the fact that the reason why Black and brown people are experiencing racism is because of you. And I very clearly say you and not just people who look like you. Because oftentimes people will be able to point to, oh yeah, I have that racist uncle that does that, or I have that colleague at work that does that, but I'm one of the good ones. Right. So
I'm sure most people on this call feel that. Can agree. I see all the white people shaking their heads like, yes, I know that. I am that.
Right. And so when people feel like, oh, she's talking about me. Yes, that's why I called the book Me in White Supremacy, because I want you to recognize that when your Black or brown colleague is saying, I want the white colleagues at my work to know this, they're talking about you. They want you to know that you are racially aggressing them in ways you don't even realize.
Yeah. And even if you have a Black best friend or a Black child or a Black husband, a Black whatever, like it's still.
And what I will say about that actually is that sometimes that proximity to Black people and brown people can be a way in which you end up doing more harm, because you believe that proximity automatically makes you not racist. Right, that proximity of I have my best friend is Black, or I dated Black people, or my child is Black, therefore I can't be racist, because if you're saying I'm racist, that means I'm racist against this person I love very much. And why that's hard is because the way that you're thinking about racism is you're thinking about it as consciously chosen acts of meanness, instead of a system and an ideology that you have been unconsciously, unintentionally conditioned into.
Yeah.
And so with the example of like having a Black child or a child of color, you know, if you're not willing to look at how am I racist, when something happens to your child, because you haven't looked at your own racism, it's very difficult to point to stand up for your child. Because you don't want to go criticize those nice white people who didn't really mean it. That's not what they meant, or that's not what the child meant, and let's just sweep it under the rug and keep it moving, right? You prioritize whiteness instead of prioritizing your child. So that's an example. So I said there's two things that can happen if you're not starting within. One of them is that you come from this place of white saviorism. The second thing is that there's a book, and this is kind of going into kind of your area of work now, Justin. There's a book called The Dark Side of the Dark Side of the Light Chasers, by Debbie Ford.
I think that's what it's called. I think that's why my brain is saying that that's close. So anyway,
yeah. Amkari's saying yes, it is. So
okay, great. Thank you. Okay, cool, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. No,
the light side of the dark chasers.
Really? Okay.
Something like that.
I'll look it up, but keep going. Yeah.
It's one of those. And what she talks about in that book, it's not an anti-racism book. She's a white woman. She's passed away now. It's not an anti-racism book, but she talks about the
dark side of the light chasers, by the way.
The dark side of the light chasers. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
What she talks about is that when we don't address our shadows and we don't own the parts of ourselves that we deem to be ugly or wrong or bad, that they jump up and punch us in the mouth anyway. Like they control us anyway.
Without us even recognizing it.
Without us even recognizing it. And of course, this idea of the shadow is something that Carl Jung talks about, but I think it's so relevant when we're talking about racism, because for those liberal progressives, right, that we talked about, owning their racism is a big shadow, because the thing that you've been taught is racists are bad. Racism is bad. I am a good person. If I own up to racism, then I'm saying I'm bad. And I don't want, who wants to feel bad? Nobody wants to feel bad, right? So we will distance ourselves from anything that is not that is not good, that is not nice. And I did a talk recently on Good Ancestor Podcast Live with Rebecca Baruchi, who's an author and also a meditation teacher. And she talked about this idea of toxic positivity, where we only focus on what's good. We only focus on what's positive. We only focus on the love and light. We're not willing to look at our shadow. We're not willing to look at the parts that we have societally agreed are wrong. And so when we don't look at them, it doesn't go away.
Right.
It just festers. And it shows up in these really sneaky, insidious ways. And because it doesn't look like very overt, violent acts of racism, you know, physical racial attacks, because it doesn't look like that, we say, well, it's not racism. But those insidious, sneaky ways that it shows up is still wear and tear to Black, Indigenous people of color every single day. It's a wear and tear on our minds, on our bodies, on our psyches. And like I said, we may not be killed by the police, but we'll be killed slowly over time. And studies have shown that racial trauma does shorten Black and brown people's lives because of what we carry. Right. Yeah. And that it doesn't get to move out. And it's, even when you do the healing, you're still living in a racist society.
It's just constantly refreshing. Another hashtag on top of a hashtag on top of a shooting, on top of a thing. And it's like, you don't even get to ever let it all pass through and go, because it's just constantly hitting you.
Right.
Present traumatic stress disorder is what we've been calling it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you don't look at how am I contributing it to it, and you just think, I'm just going to go do that, you know, 'cause a question I often get is, what's one thing that I can do every day to be an ally? And I know what people are really asking is, what's one thing that I can tick off a checklist? What's one thing that won't make me feel uncomfortable? What's one thing that I can do that where I can still maintain a sense of safety? What's one thing that I can do and then just get on with the rest of my day and not have to think about this thing, right? What's one thing that I can do that will make me feel good, like I'm part of change, but won't actually require any risk on my part? And the big bubble that I'm here to burst is, you don't get to do that. Black people don't get to die and you say, what's one thing that I can do? You don't get to do that.
Yeah. And even just this question of what's one thing that I can do, this is an example of the swimming pool of white supremacy that we're living in, because Black people don't get to say, what's one thing that I can do every day to make sure that I'm not experiencing racism. It's like, we don't get to ask that. Well, what's one thing that I can do today to make sure that when I go outside, like, I'm not a target? You know, I'm thinking about, I recently, just a couple months ago, I was getting ready to do a huge talk at Google. And beforehand, I was like, I'm going to take really good care of myself. I went and rented this house up in Sonoma County for myself with a jacuzzi and in the woods and in nature. And I was so excited to get there. And I drove up and I'm like juiced. I'm in my rental car and it's, you know, kind of sparse community. And then right across the street is this American flag thing sticking out with somebody with the Trump sticker on their bumper across the street. Now, I know this area of California's Guerneville, for anybody who knows, like, there's really no Black people there anyways. And I got there at night. I got there at like 7, 8 p.m. And here I am alone, a Black man, going into this house across the street from these Trump supporters. And I was shaking. I was absolutely trembling. And I got in the house and I called my mom and I called one of my friends and I was like, I'm scared. I am in here and I am terrified. I don't want to go to sleep. I need to wait an hour. What if they call the police and the police show up at the door? What am I going to say? There's a Black man who broke into this house. Like, these are things that people don't recognize, or it's like a constant, like, that just hits you, you know, again and again. And there's not this what's one, and I wasn't doing anything. I was just going to a house to like write and chill, you know? And so what I had to do was the next day when I went out to the jacuzzi, I made sure that I was dressed nice and not in sweat. So I went out when I made sure those white people were outside so they could see that I was like this nice Black man who was renting the place and not some guy. Like I had to do all that work just to feel safe in this house that I rented, you know, that I paid for on Airbnb.
Right.
And these are things that people don't recognize. Go ahead.
And the reality is that none of those things are guarantees of keeping you safe anyway.
At all.
And that's what's terrifying about it. So you have, on the one hand, you know, Black people and brown people and people of color experiencing what Justin has just said, right? He thought, I've got this amazing opportunity to go speak at Google. I'm going to prioritize my self-care. I'm going to go take care of my things, myself. And now I'm in this situation, and it's taken you out of the peace, the state of peace that you were wanting to cultivate for yourself, and into survival mode. You're now in, how can I make sure that I just survive while being in this place? And you have the neighbors who live in that place, and not just the people with the Trump flag in their garden, but all the other neighbors as well, who are just going about their merry day.
Yeah.
And so you're living where you're physically in the same space, but you're living in two different worlds.
Yeah.
Right. And so when white people and people who have white privilege are saying, what can I do? The first place is in recognizing what is actually happening. What is actually going on? Not just what you're seeing on the news, those violent acts of horrific things that are happening, but everyday experiences that Black and brown people are happening, that Justin may never even share that, right? It's just because we're here having that conversation, right? But you don't realize that's an experience that he's had that is affecting his brain, affecting his physiology, affecting his ability to live from that place of what we're talking about, living from the place of his full humanity.
Yeah, this is so important. So Layla, one of the things that I would like to do is, I know that her book, so this is the thing, like if coming on here and expecting like this answer, like what are we going to do to solve the problem? Obviously we know that it takes work, and we can commit to step into it. And I can tell you with certainty that the best first step that you can take, or not even first step, the best next step that you can take is to get Layla's book and start doing this 28-day work. And this is, you guys know me, this is not me trying to sell her book. I don't do that on these things. It is the actual work. It is absolutely incredible. And Layla, one of the things that I want to do, however, is just if we could bring in one of the practical examples that would be good to give people an understanding of the kind of work that can be done in the book, just to be very specific, because we've named a whole bunch of things like white fragility and colorism and this and that. So can we dig into one of those a little bit as a teaching?
So let's do day one, you and white privilege, because you don't need my book to do this. If you don't want to buy it, you don't need my book to do this. So for those unfamiliar with the book, Me and White Supremacy, this is, first of all, if you're wondering why there's a blue copy and there's an orange copy and you're thinking, which one am I supposed to get? The blue one was published in the US, so it's available if you buy it in the US and Canada. The orange one was published in the UK, so if you're buying it from the UK or Ireland or Australia and New Zealand, you will get the orange version. Different markets have different covers sometimes. The work is laid out as a 28-day process where each day, and you don't have to do it in 28 days. I think that's really important to note. This is actually a lifelong work. So if you need to stretch it out, stretch it out. It's work that I hope you come back to again and again in cycles anyway. So don't feel like I didn't get a day done today, I need to do it. Stretch it out as much as you need to. It's laid out as 28 days, a 4-week process of looking at different areas of white supremacy and the ways that it manifests individually, personally within you. And in the first week, we look at what I call the basics. So this
is for everybody, just confirming, everyone on here of all colors and races and genders, not just white people, to do this work. It's for all of us in the book.
Would you say that? I didn't say
I'm
that.
asking you. I'm asking you. I'm asking
No,
you.
it's not. No, it's
Okay.
not. Okay, thank you for clarifying. So I write in this book, there's sort of part one where I explain what is this work and who am I anyway, and what is white supremacy and what do you need to do this work? And I talk about who is this work for. And I say, in fact, I'll read it to you. Because that is an important question. So thank you, Justin. So I say, this work is for any person who holds white privilege. By any person, I mean persons of any gender identity, including gender non-conforming persons. And by who holds white privilege, I mean persons who are visually identifiable as white or who pass for white. Therefore, this also includes persons who are biracial, multiracial, or white passing people of color who benefit under systems of white supremacy from having lighter skin color than visibly brown, black, or indigenous people. So when I say biracial, multiracial, I'm saying if white people see you, do they think you're white? Or are you able to pass as perhaps you are white, right? Because I have a friend who is a biracial woman, but I didn't know she was biracial until she told me. So she doesn't benefit from white privilege because she looks like a black woman, right? So that's why, right? Got it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I use those words very specifically in the book. I don't say this is for white people because, like I said, there are biracial, multiracial people of color. There are also people of color who maybe are not biracial or multiracial, but who are maybe able to pass as white or have proximity to whiteness in a way that they have white privilege or white passing privilege.
Great. And I just want to say one thing, because I see people freaking out in the chat box. They're saying it's sold out on Amazon. It's because of COVID and everything that's happening. But what you guys can do actually is...
So I will say about that. I will say about that. My publishers, both in the UK and the US, told me that the book has sold out. But they're working very, very hard to restock it. But Amazon are also deprioritizing books. But it's also not... because we're not, I know people are like, but I want to support Amazon. That's fine. You can buy it from anywhere, but it's actually everywhere that it's selling out because of COVID and because of the deprioritization.
Do you know if it's available on bookshop.com? Have you heard?
It's also sold out on Bookshop.
Sold out there. Okay,
yeah,
get on the wait list, y'all. Or get the digital version.
I think you can, I think you can actually buy it and they'll send it to you when it's there, something like that.
That's what Amazon does. Yeah, you can also do it on IndieBook or Bookshop or Kindle or iBooks.
It's also on it's on Audible as well.
Cool, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue into
day one. So it's a 4-week process. The first week is about the basics, and these will be terms you've heard: white privilege, white fragility. These are terms that you've heard. So day one is about white privilege, and the reason I say you don't need my book to do this work is I pull from and quote the work of Peggy McIntosh, who popularized the term white privilege and wrote an essay which is available for free on the internet called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. And she wrote about 50 different ways that white privilege shows up. So your job, your mission is to go search out that article and to go through those 50 different ways that white privilege just shows up in everyday life and tick off as many as you can that apply to you, right? And I'm going to read you some. And she says, and I quote her on the opening of day one, she says, "I was taught to see racism only in individual acts of meanness and not in invisible systems conferring dominance on my group." Meaning, like many white people, she was taught racism is about being a bad person and has nothing to do with systems that give me dominance over other people that I'm not even aware of. So I quote some of her examples of white privilege. "I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. When I am told about our national heritage or about civilization, I am shown that people of my color made it what it is." That true?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Click, click, right? Yes.
Read some
I
more.
can
This is
go.
good. Yeah.
I can go into a bookshop and count on finding the writing of my race represented, into a supermarket and find the staple foods that fit with my cultural traditions, into a hairdresser's shop and find somebody who can deal with my hair. I did not have to educate our children to be aware of systemic racism for their own daily physical protection. If a traffic cop pulls me over, or if the IRS audits my tax return, I can be sure I haven't been singled out because of my race. If my day, week, or year is going badly, I need not ask of each negative episode or situation whether it has racial overtones. Am I having a bad day because I'm white? Is that why I'm having a bad day? Am I having a bad week because I'm white? That's not something you need to ask yourself. I can be sure that if I need legal or medical help, my race will not work against me. And so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So there's 50 of these examples, and the essay is called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack by Peggy McIntosh. Go Google it, pull it up, and tick off as many as you can that relate to your life. And understand that for all of the things that are true in your life, the exact opposite is true for Black and Brown people.
Yeah, I love, if I can just tell a quick story with this, Layla, that just because I love how it helps it land a little bit. So, I have friends of all races and colors, and one of my best friends is white. And several years ago, we were driving and I was in the passenger seat and there was a cop on this side and we got pulled over. And we had no idea why we could have possibly gotten pulled over. Like there was nothing, but the cop was on my side.
Right.
And so they pull over, and I think they were surprised to see that there was a white woman driving and a Black man in the passenger seat. But we got pulled over, and immediately when my friend rolled down the window, she starts going off on him. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, and I'd never been pulled over with a white person before. Why are you pulling me over? We didn't do anything. Like, I need to see your driver's license. For what? Were you guys smoking? No, we don't, like yelling at this police officer. And I'm sitting there like, first of all, I'm like, if you don't stop, do you know what I mean? Because you have a Black man sitting next to you in this car. And then he asks me for my driver's license. And
Wow.
I'm getting out my driver's license very carefully. And she's like, why does he have to give his driver's license? He's not driving, doing all these things. And I'm like, oh my God. But recognizing that, oh my God, white people can argue with the police like this? Like,
Right.
This is what they can do? Like, I didn't even know this was like a thing, But
Right.
to see the difference of what happens there getting pulled over. And it was very clear that he pulled us over because he saw me in the passenger seat, in a white neighborhood. And so anyway, this shows up in so many ways that even in that story where it's a Black man and a white woman in a car, we're having two completely different experiences around the same incident. So
thank you for sharing that, and that must have been terrifying.
oh girl, I was like,
yeah.
please God, just like let her
Right.
be quiet and get me out of here. Like I was just like,
And I think what's really important to note here as well, and this is not to single out white women, but I know there are a lot of white women on this call. I think it's really important for white women for you to realize just how much power you actually have.
yeah.
Because a lot of times when people such as myself are doing this work and we are calling you in, one of the arguments that you come back with is, but we are women and we, are impacted by the patriarchy and we are oppressed too. And yes, like sexism is real, the patriarchy is real, but your whiteness is a weapon that you also leverage. And you're completely unaware of how much damage it does. Because one of the things that comes with white womanhood is the presumption of innocence, purity, niceness, and this desire that the rest of the world has to protect you at all costs in a way that does not apply for Black women. The presumption for us is that we are angry, that we are strong, that we are aggressive, that we don't feel pain, that we are disposable, that we are not to be believed, we are not trustworthy. And so in the situation with Justin and his friend, and this is someone, is your best friend, right? This is somebody who does not realize just how much danger she was putting you in, and just how much power she is able to leverage, that she could have that kind of an interaction and not think about, could this end up in me dying? There is no way in hell Justin could have done what she'd done.
Oh my God, no way. Yeah, no way.
And things might have gone very differently if the woman was a Black woman and you were a Black man in the car.
Absolutely.
So it's really important for white women, for you to realize, and we've just seen in the news, you know, with Christine Cooper and Amy Cooper in the park, and her very deliberately naming the fact that there is an African-American man here, and I don't feel safe, right? Yeah. She knew exactly what she was doing. It's very important just for you to be aware of just how much power you are able to leverage and to weaponize very quickly.
Yeah, this is beautiful. So where I want to transition us right now. So one of the things that we do every time in the Woke Lab, almost an essential element to what the Woke Lab was created for those of you who've been here before, is we break out into breakout groups. But when Layla and I actually talked before this, and we had a deep conversation about how to bring this forward to such a powerful mixed group. And I just want to say really here, because I know there's a lot that everybody's feeling right now. This is the work. This is the work. And you guys are doing great work. You guys are doing great work by being here. And one of the things that Layla and I discussed is that we're actually not going to break out into breakout groups, because we don't want white supremacy to show up without us knowing in the groups and cause more harm on the Black and brown people who are in the groups. So we want you guys to know that we're here to protect that for all of us together and hold us in a sacred space. And so what we would like to do, however, is open up some conversation here in the big group together. And we'll be here for about 20 more minutes. I like to end always at 90 minutes, you know, so we'll end right on time. And so if you come to speak, just keep it brief and say what it is that you really have to say to give as many people time to speak as possible. And then we're going to be able to talk through a few things. But the question that we want to prompt all of you to, actually, this is how I'd love to do it. Layla, you're still good with the question that we decided upon?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay,
yeah.
So here's how I would like to do this. I'd love for everybody just for a moment to close your eyes if it feels comfortable to you, and place one hand over your heart. Make sure it's not on your throat, but actually on your heart center, and the other hand over that. And on the count of 3, I'd like you to exhale everything out of your system through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Exhale everything out through the nose, come to completely empty. And now to my count of 6, slowly inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is beautiful. All of our breaths together. We're going to do this 2 more times. Inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more time. Inhale deeply for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep your eyes closed if they're closed and it feels comfortable for you to do that. And just notice the feeling of all of us here from all these spots in the world breathing together and the power of that. And I'm going to ask you a question, And I want you to just see what bubbles up for you from your heart in this place. Here's the question. As we build together towards a more loving and equitable world, free of white supremacy and free of racism and free of anti-Blackness, what do you see as your role as a good ancestor who's helping to co-create that world? What do you see as your role as we're building a more equitable world? And just see what bubbles up. See what bubbles up. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, knowing that we all contribute to this new dawn of the world that we all want to see together. And when you're ready, keeping yourself in this space, just open your eyes. And I would love, if you're willing, because I know everyone's not going to get a chance to speak today, is to type into the chat box what you think your role is, or what it might be in creating this world, so we can see all of this coming through. And then in the meantime, I'm going to open up to have some discussion. And you may just want to speak about what your role is and what that is, or it may be something else that pops up for you that I will have Layla take the lead on handling or not handling based on what comes up. And if you want to speak, I would love you to just push the, well, actually, go ahead and just unmute yourself. There's too many people here for me to see you raising your hands. So unmute yourself. I'll see it happen, and then I'll manage the multiple things. So Carrie, I think you're unmuted. Did you want to speak, my dear?
I would love to.
Wonderful.
So I wrote in the chat box what came up for me, and what's been coming up for me is the way I look at this, like literally excavating racism out of the fabric of my being. And I've been doing a lot of gardening, and I just feel like I have to constantly take those weeds out of my soul. And in doing so, helping other white folks in that journey as well, and doing so not in anger but in love. That's what I'm hoping to do.
Thank you. Layla, is there anything you want to say to that at all?
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really apt metaphor, because it's not a one and done job. It's not, I got it out and now I'm done, right? Just like spiritual work, right, Justin? We don't
exactly.
We don't heal the thing and we say we're done with it and it will never be an issue for me ever again. We keep coming back to it again and again, with the understanding that the roots of those weeds go deep generations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we still live in a racist society. So the tendency is to go to usually to align ourselves back to what the status quo is. And what I want, and the world that the work that I am doing, is how can we get a mass number of people to be creating change so that we have a new status quo, right? And so each individual person has to take responsibility for their part in helping to create that new status quo. And then the other thing that I will say is, when you said to do that from a place not of anger, but of love, anger is included in love.
I agree. I was hoping you would say that. Yeah.
We should be angry.
Yeah.
Black people are dying. We should be angry. But anger in and of itself is not the destination. It's the spark that lights the change, that something needs to change. And then we move from a place of, I'm doing this work because I love humanity, because I love Black and brown people, because I love myself and the people around me. And I want us to all have that new world.
Beautiful. And one of the things that, if I may add, Carrie, thank you so much, is that as I've been doing so much shadow work over the last few years, which spiritually is that same thing, Carrie, pulling out those weeds constantly. And you're like, thought I got all the weeds after this session. Nope, here they come, they're coming back. And one of the things around anger for me, and it's really interesting how white supremacy actually holds up this thing of like, don't be angry, right? Like, oh, don't be too angry, because when Black people get really angry, now it's making white people very uncomfortable. So like, make sure you guys do this in a way that feels very, you know, passe
Safe.
and
Right.
safe. Yeah, it's like, no, people are dying. Like, yes, people are burning shit down because someone just got lynched in the street. Absolutely. You know, do I think that that's right? No, but like one thing that I learned that has been so helpful to me and has actually inspired me to use my anger to do good is to decouple anger from aggression. Oftentimes we have coupled, and we've only seen this in our lives with toxic masculinity, that anger and aggression are one and the same, but they're not, right? Anger, when it's not aggressive, doesn't have to harm. It can incite and inspire us to action. But aggression is cutting things down, right? And so when we can be really angry, we can do it holding that space of love at the same time. And so it's something I've been leaning into, and something I'll just invite you into with your anger, Carrie. Thank you so much for sharing. The next person that I have on here is Villain May. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
What would you like to share today? I saw you were unmuted.
I didn't know I unmuted.
Oh, you didn't know? No, you were unmuted. You did it on accident. Okay, well, you don't have to share that. Is there anything you'd like to share?
I'm super excited to be here. And I feel like I'm sitting right in between both of you because like I have a front row seat because I'm right next to you on the little boxes. I teach high school and I am just so thrilled to think about how I can bring some of these ideas to my very white population of students and help them to think about their role in racism differently. And I feel like that's one way that I can maybe start, other than working on myself, of course, first, but one way that I can make an impact beyond myself to try to help these children think about their role also. I'm super excited.
I'm so glad that we inadvertently brought you on, Villain, because the next book I'm working on is the Young Readers edition of Me and White Supremacy.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
So for parents and teachers, it's really important in this period right now, before that book comes out, for you to be really in the work yourself with the adult version, because you need to hold space for what's going to be coming up for the kids. And we're going to be taking them through that same, we're taking them through the 28-day process as well. It's just going to be adapted for younger people.
Cool. I just want to name something, and Layla, I don't know what your response to this is, but like I'm looking at the list of all the people who are unmuted, and I'm actually like, almost everyone's white. So what is that? You know, and I'm like, okay, I mean, we can do that, but I don't know if there's anything that you might want to speak to about that, Layla.
I would love if, so I think I mean, let me put myself, if I was not in the speaker here and I was in a space where I was attending as a guest, and the conversation is all about whiteness and white supremacy, I think I would probably feel a little bit like, can I say what I need to say here? Is it safe for me to show up? And like, can I say what I need to say? And one of the reasons why, well, the main reason why Justin and I chose not to do the breakout rooms was because in my work, I will always center Black and brown people and our safety. And so I didn't want to have to have these individual like side discussions without any moderation, and us having Black and brown people being harmed because we haven't been mindful. But I also know in this big group, it can also feel like, can I say what I need to say? I would love if anybody who is Black or brown or
I have a few people now who've unmuted.
I would love you to share whatever's in your heart, and please know that I have your back. Like, say anything you want to say.
Omkari, I see you here.
Yes.
Hey, Layla. Yeah.
And William, so you're my sis too.
I know.
Same last name.
Right? So the thing that I what I do in the world is I sort of bring the intersection of Layla's work on white supremacy to the field of activism across the board, because at the bottom of all of our social justice issues, in my opinion, lies white supremacy. Whether you're talking about how we treat the environment, or you're talking about how we treat women, or you're talking about our prison systems across the board. So for me, it's like, if you are someone who considers themselves an activist, start with dismantling your own racism and then bring that out into your specific activist area of interest and concern. So that's
beautiful.
that's
Thank you
what I
so
do.
much.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Thank
Omkari,
you
for the
for
work that you're
having this.
doing.
It's great to see my sister and just to meet this community. Thank you.
Such a beautiful
Thanks,
community. Thank you.
Omkari.
And now, Trey, I would love for you to speak next, Trey.
Sure.
Hi,
I just
Trey.
want to thank. Hello, how you doing?
I'm good.
Thank you both so much for providing this space, because it is so important and it's so essential. I just, this past year at my university, I was just a part of the student movement and bringing light to the institutional racism on our campus. And in doing so, we came up against so much ignorance among the students, the faculty, and the administrators alike towards their ignorance towards the experiences of Black, Indigenous people of color, and seeing how that created a violent environment due to their ignorance. So as a result, one of the things that I'm really passionate about moving forward in the future is, help facilitating social justice workshops and truth and reconciliation workshops where people can really develop an awareness, empathy, and consequently solidarity in combating the oppression and structural violence against marginalized communities. So I appreciate you all holding this space because, like you all said, this is a part of the work that is essential and really needs to be done. And I appreciate you all holding this space specifically in this week as well, so that in lieu of the loss of our brother Big Floyd and so many other things, horrors that are going on, we're responding to it in a way that is meaningful and is not just reinforcing the status quo. So just thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Trey, how old are you again? Can you tell the people?
I'm 21.
You guys.
Wow.
I have like
I
chills
wanna
over my whole body. I want to
cry.
cry.
Yeah.
I know I know how old Trey is, but I want to cry because how amazing, right? How amazing that these are what our younger generation, this is the work that they're doing. And this is fucking amazing, Trey. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank you.
for sharing, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joanna, did I say your name right?
Yes.
Yes, Joanna. Hey, what's up?
I'm good. Thank you both so much. I mean, the timing, it couldn't have been planned better. My work, I work for a chamber of commerce, one actually of the largest in the country. And our work intersects equity and inclusion with the companies that are members. And so being able to work with Fortune 500 companies, I saw somebody mention that they're looking to help with that. As a person who does this work on a regular basis, we need these kind of opportunities to just be refilled and heard, and to know that when I'm going into a room where it does not look like me, or I'm introducing topics where I have to be strategic, thoughtful, put a lot of effort and energy into bringing these topics that may be uncomfortable for some people, but they are enlightening and designed to move the conversation around race forward. We need that feeling. So for me, this was self-care, and I am just very thankful for the opportunity to participate. And now I feel like I can go back. So,
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you.
Thank you.
And can I just say, I'm really emotional because I'm just so struck by the.
I'm with you right now.
So when I talk about, so there, in a couple of weeks, there's an interview that I got to interview Justin for Good Ancestor podcast, and it's coming out in a couple of weeks. And one of the things that I'm continually grateful for is that I get to introduce and to interview so many incredible Black and brown people who are doing amazing work and are just oftentimes not getting highlighted, not getting platformed, or not getting the level of recognition that their white peers are getting, often for doing work that is a lot more mediocre. I'm just going to say that, okay? Because when you have someone like Trey, who's 21 years old and is able to speak with the eloquence and the intellect and the everything that he just did, and Joanna, who's out there doing this work, it's like, wow. You know, these, Nicole Cardoza, who's another guest coming up, calls it underestimated entrepreneurs, right? Underestimated people. And I think about the fact that, you know, with Trey as an example, but also with Joanna, like your colleagues are just going into the workplace and doing their work. They're not also having to think about how can we address systemic racism, right? That's not what you're there for. That's like an additional thing that you're doing if you're not specifically in the work. And it's that living in those two worlds yet again, right? It's that living in that place of, how, in what ways are, if you're white, that you're able to move just in your everyday life in a way where you don't even, race doesn't even need to be a thing that you think about at all. And I want to say to Trey and to Joanna and to every other Black Indigenous person on this call, I'm so inspired by each one of you. And I also really want to remind you that your self-care must always come first.
Yeah.
Always, 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 always. Because we need you. We need you not to die young. We need you not to die poor. We need you not to die unhealthy. We need you whole and joyful and, you know, with beauty coming from the inside out. We need that. And we need you to do the work that you're doing, but we don't need you to martyr yourself.
That's beautiful.
And please demand from the white people in your lives, tell them exactly what you need them to do. And I don't just mean doing the work, right? You're telling them this is, I need you to go study this or read this or do, what do you need? You. What do you need in order for you to show up in your work whole? How do they need to show up so that they're not doing harm to you, and how can they pour into you or make sure that you're being poured into? Because you're the leaders. It is very clear to me. It is very clear to me that you are the leaders and you are the ones that we are looking towards. And so call on people who say that they want to show up in allyship to you, for you, and say, I need this, and I need this, and be unapologetic in asking for what you need. And when people are unwilling to show up for you in those ways, then you know.
This is beautiful. Thank you. Layla, do you have time? I have so many more people. I just wanted to take maybe 2 or 3 more.
I'm good. Okay. I'm good.
So I'm going to take 3 more. So, because I know some people have been unmuted for like the whole time. So Mackenzie Edwards, I don't see you on the screen, but I know you're unmuted. If you just talk, we'll be able to see you.
Yes.
Hi, Mackenzie.
Hi, Layla. Hi, Justin. I'm smiling because I, like, you know, the others who have gone before me, I'm just in a space of gratitude right now. Thank you so much for holding this space and creating an opportunity for people who look like me to be affirmed in our humanity. So first and foremost, thank you so much for that. Justin, your question before the beautiful breath exercise and meditation, or during it, Spirit once again affirmed for me that I am meant to be here to hold space through tools like breath exercises and meditation, and even different types of yoga, specifically for Black and Brown people to have an opportunity to release the trauma that we are carrying in our body. Yeah. In 2016 to 2018, I was doing educational events, speaking on all of the stuff that you're sharing, using the arts and mixed media to try to my best to help white people to listen. And I since then have shifted and realized that truly my calling and the work I'm meant to be doing is actually holding space for healing for Black and Brown people. So thank you.
This is beautiful.
Thank
you for being a good ancestor, sister.
Yes. and I will say, thank you so much for sharing that. I will say that there are two people who are Black whose work, whose healing work is really helping me to hold that container for myself. One of them is Justin and Stay Woke and the practices that I'm learning in that. And the other one is Jessamine Stanley, the yoga teacher. She has an app called the Underbelly app, the Underbelly Yoga, something like that, the Underbelly. And that combination of meditation and yoga by people who look like me, who are talking about what's actually happening, is so nourishing for me. And so the work that you're talking about, Mackenzie, is so needed, because that trauma that lives in the body and that pain and that grief, right? We're seeing now with this new cycle, we were just in one, another one's coming. And it's not normal to live like this. It's not normal to be constantly re-traumatized by Black pain and Black death and then not having anywhere for those feelings to go. So healers who are specifically holding space for Black and Brown people right now, so important. So yeah, spirit is affirming, and I'm.
What was
and
her
I'm
name
saying,
again? I want to type it into the
chat. Who Jessamine?
Of the Underbelly, yeah, Jessamine.
Jessamine Stanley. I'll type it in.
Okay, thank you.
She's also coming up in Good Ancestor podcast soon.
Yay, beautiful. Okay,
Yeah.
so these are the last people that I'm going to take, and I'm sorry, I'm just literally going like random order. So we're going to have Maida, Maria, and Demetrius. Those are our last three, okay? And I'm sorry, all of you who want to speak right now. I know I wish we can stay on for hours, but y'all know Zoom for more than 90 minutes is like exhausting for everybody, so we ain't gonna do it. We'll leave you begging for more, not asking for mercy, okay? So Maida, you can go first, and then we'll go to Maria.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the time and space to share. So as an Asian person, it's something that I'm kind of struggling with in terms of like, what can I do? And I realized that part of it is like, there's a lot of anti-Blackness in the Asian community that I have to do. And that's again, like a hard pill to swallow. So imagine that for an Asian person and amplify that, I don't know, thousands of times. That would be the kind of work that has to be done for white folks. And same with what Mackenzie said, that white people listen to white people. And that's why I realize I post so much on my LinkedIn, nobody really sees it, react to it. But when a white woman or a white person kind of shares the exact same thing that I'm sharing,
right,
they get so much praise for it. So just know that that's white people, you have that power, you have that influence, so leverage that. And I'm currently in Singapore, but I study in Minnesota. So I have a lot of like anger and upsetness, and I know like kind of in full scale of what's going on in Minnesota right now. And so like instead of thoughts and prayers, we have to really take action when these things come up, like sign those petitions, call. Like I'm in Singapore, I can't call, so I try to do everything that I can online, like comment on the website and Facebook, like anything that I can find, donate, you know, like if you have that capacity, donate to those POC organizations that are like doing this work, that are helping. Sean King is like kind of dedicating his whole life in helping folks who are kind of going through this. And so So I'm just gonna stop there before I ramble on.
Thank you, Maida.
Yeah.
Maybe you're in Singapore. What time is it there now?
It's 2:30 a.m.
Wow, I was gonna say it's 9:30 for me, so I know it's late for you.
And Maida's
thank you.
always on, so thank you for
Yes!
being here. Oh, what a gift.
Thank you for being here. And you named something so important, which is the anti-Blackness work that needs to be done by non-Black people of color. Black people around the world are on the end of experiencing anti-Blackness. And so it needs to be addressed everywhere it is. And it's something that I really struggle with, this idea that out of all the races that Black people are seen as the most inferior, and the darker you are, the darker that is true in the social construction. But it is evil, and it needs to be rooted out. Black people are the original people.
Period.
Period.
Full stop.
Feel how you want to feel about it, but that's
yeah, full stop.
Yeah.
Maria. Welcome, Maria.
Hello, thank you so very much for having this forum here. I just wanted to say at the beginning, when you were saying, Justin, that it was all white people who were willing to speak on this particular call, I think it's so beautiful and so indicative that we need your voice, Justin, and your voice, Layla, to encourage the Black community to find that power of their voice too, and not give in to the fear of speaking when there are white people in the room for fear of being criticized and such. I just think that's so beautiful that Trey spoke up, and many of you piped in after Justin's encouragement, and that's what we need. I also wanted to say, I'm here with my mom, and my son was here a little bit ago.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Make it through the whole thing, but Justin, oh my God, after the Santa Cruz event that we were at with Ruth King and such months ago, I did come home and talk to my son about many of the things that Ruth was talking about, and he said, Mom, there is no difference between he and his Black friend. And that just broke my heart. And
I'm hearing a lot of noise on somebody's end here. Hold on, I don't know. Maria, is your audio close to you?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
But I just don't want to go into the white fragility of it all. But I do want to say that as we go through our generations, the thing that jumps out at me the most is we don't get what we do. Our actions don't change things. It's who we are. We get what we are. And that's where the work is, just like you guys are saying. It's like who we are. That's where our strength is. It's not with that one thing we do per day or whatever the case may be. It's who we are and how we live our life, how we walk our walk so that our kids can see it and we benefit. And,
beautiful.
so thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you, Maria. And thank you for having your whole family in on this. 3 generations. It's so beautiful. What's your mom's name?
Wilma.
Wilma. Hi, Wilma.
Actually, Guillermina, but we'll leave it as Wilma.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And then the last person that I have here, Demetrius, go ahead and unmute yourself. I muted you again for a moment, so go ahead and unmute yourself.
First of all, let me just say thank you to all of my people that's on this line. It's encouraging to see the diversity on the line, to see the people willing to begin the process of the work that needs to be done, to be compelled to even be on a call like this to begin that work, individually and collectively. That's powerful. It speaks volumes, and it means a lot to me, and I know to the other people of color that's on this line. What I really wanted to speak about was, and the last young lady just actually was a great segue, and it was the power of my voice. This platform has enabled me to feel comfortable to even speak about this, and I think, like for me, like all of the events that has happened, my family members were on me, like, don't speak, don't say anything. There's going to be all of these different ramifications if you post something about this. And it kind of talks about the trauma and how this perpetuates in our own community continuously, because out of fear and protection, they don't want you to be that voice. They don't want you to talk about it. So it's passed down historically to be quiet, keep your head down, don't speak too much. And so this continues this entire process. And so what this did for me is make me feel comfortable to continue to speak and to know that there are other individuals out there with like-mindedness want change. And I'm just glad to be a part of that. And you guys have lit fire under me to continue. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Demetrius. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I want to add to that, which is that, and you don't have to if you don't want to.
Right.
I was interviewed, I can't remember when it was, last year sometime, and it was by a woman of color. And she was asking me about, so what can people of color do to, have the confidence to speak up, and what should they be saying? And I said, they don't need to say anything if they don't want to. The thing that they can do is live their lives. It's not their responsibility if that doesn't call to them. If it does, amazing. Like the more, the better. And if that starts, that feeling that Demetrius that you're describing of that, that rising, I'm kind of imagining that energy rising up through your chest and wanting to come out through your mouth, right? And speaking and showing up and saying what you've been holding back all of these years. If that's this place that you're in, amazing. And I honor you and I support you. And it's, and yeah, we need your voice. And for those who just, you know what, it's enough for me to just live my life as a free Black person, and that's my revolution, and that's me dismantling white supremacy, then do that too. My mom, she used to have the saying that I didn't understand when I was younger, but I get it now. And she would say, I'm just here to be Black and die. And I didn't understand it. I was like, what does that mean? And I understand is, I'm just here to be a whole Black human being and live my life and die as a whole Black human being, right? My mom doesn't need to be an activist or a writer or a speaker or any of those things for her to be a part of this change. So whether you are called to speak or not, whatever it is, my desire for you is that you just live free to what's wanting to be lived in your heart, if that makes sense.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Layla. Thank you. And thank you all for your open hearts today, and for sharing, and for showing up, and for feeling all the emotions that have come up through this process, and for having the capacity to hold it. One of the things that is so beautiful to me, and I know Layla and I both agree with this, is, Layla, I think I heard you say once that a lot of people think that what Black people want, what all Black people want, is like to get back and like to get right, and for white people to like atone.
Right.
But what
Vengeance.
I know that vengeance, and that's not what I want. I know that's not what Layla wants. What we want is a world where this grid that we're seeing on the screen, with this level of love and this level of integrity and this level of equality and acceptedness and openness and listening and heart-centeredness, where this is the status quo. We want equality for all of us. And that is the community that we're building here. This is why the Woke Lab exists. This is why you showing up is so important. And so in closing, what I would like to do is to, I'll do this actually. Just take, this will take 1 second. Go ahead.
Before you do that, can I just
Please,
say
Layla.
something
Yeah, please.
about that vengeance? I don't want vengeance, but I do want accountability.
Hell yes, accountability.
And
Yeah.
I think that's really important to name, because we are talking about this new, beautiful, loving world, and it sounds so wonderful. Like we just get there now, and we can't skip, hop, and jump over accountability to get to that.
Can't
world.
Spiritual bypass our way there. Nope.
Hell no.
Nope.
Right? So the accountability is taking responsibility for what is yours to own, that you did this, you benefit from this, you uphold it. and what needs to be changed, what needs to be repaired, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be, what reparations need to be made, right? In order for us to get to that new world. Because I'm not getting to that new world and white people feel content and like we made it here, and Black people are thinking we still didn't make up for the fact that all of that stuff happened and we've just jumped over it to try and get to this world where you're okay, but we're still not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for naming that, sister. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for naming that. And what I'd like us to do, because there's been so much that has been shared today, is if you're willing to just close your eyes again for a moment, if it feels okay with you. This will be very short. Take one breath in, breath out, hand over the heart. And I want you to think of just one takeaway that you want to make sure sticks with you after you get off this call today. What's one thing that you want to make sure you remember, whether it's an action you're going to take, whether it's something you're going to do differently moving forward in your life? Whatever it is, it takes about 45 seconds to get into our long-term memory. So just think of what that thing is for you. What are you taking with you today? And there may be many things. And take a breath in and a breath out. And open your eyes when you're ready. This is so beautiful. So I would love for you guys to, this is what we're going to leave out with in the chat box. 1, what are your takeaways? And 2, some words of love and appreciation for our dear Layla here, who has given us so much today. So if you can share some love and appreciation and your takeaways, then we'll have this whole cascade. And what I want you guys to know is what I'm going to do in the email that will come to you guys in about an hour is I'm going to make sure I have all the links to the different things that Layla has shared for us to see. And beautifully, one of our sisters here, Jenna King, offered for anybody who does not have the financial means to get Layla's book. She also offered to purchase the book for anybody who needs it. And this is beautiful mutual aid. So I'm going to put, because I don't want to send her email out to all 800 people who are signed up for the Woke Lab. So I'm going to put her email address here so that you guys can see it and copy and paste it for yourself. And I just want to thank you, Layla, for coming in with so much heart and spirit and taking us straight in to this deep conversation that we all know we need to have. You are a light. You are so incredible. And for all of you, there's just this one section of my book that I kept feeling so called to read, and it's a self-care practice for activists. And just this last part, it says, we need you so grounded that we feel safe following your lead. We need you so centered that you never stray from your vision and values. We need you so rested that you do not lash out at others during times of stress. We need you to shine your light so brightly that anyone who is lost can find you. You are a lighthouse, and your healing is essential to the liberation of the people. So thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. I love you, I honor you, and I thank you. And we'll be right back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. again for another session of the Woke Lab. And this one is going to be about how we're using ritual and ancestral tools that are sometimes looked at as taboo, like crystals and tarot and astrology and meditation, and how we can use them in our lives, not just to chill and be spiritually woo-woo, but to actually take action and change our lives and change the world. So that's tomorrow's session at 10 a.m. I love you guys. Layla, is there anything you want to add in closing?
Just thank you. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everybody who's shown up here. Thank you for, usually when I do my own calls, I usually say something along the lines of, please be responsible for the energy that you bring into the space. And I just want to thank every single person who was really responsible for the energy that they brought into the space. This is a mixed group where we are having a conversation in a very direct way about white supremacy and racism, being hosted by 2 Black people, which to me is revolutionary in and of itself. But I just want to say thank you for showing up, for being good ancestors. I said to Justin before we jumped in, I said, let's go serve now. And it's really, with the news cycle and everything that we've been seeing, today has been I've been very fragile today. I've been bursting into tears at random times, praying deeper today. And I was looking forward to this call because I know Justin has this great, big, beautiful energy. But I was also, it was tough. It was tough. But coming out the other side of it with all of you, I feel nourished. I feel full. I feel inspired, especially from hearing some of the amazing Black leaders in this space. And I feel ready to continue on with the journey. So I just want to say a big, huge thank you to every single person here.
Beautiful. We love you all. We love you. Thanks, everybody. And I'm going to take a little Instagram video of all of you guys right now because this is so cool. So if you don't want to be in it, if you don't want to be in it, then turn your camera off. So you can just say love on 3. Ready? Hold on. Is it working? Oh, wait, no. Hold on. You're in my AirPods still. Okay, there we go. 1, 2, 3, let's go! Love. Togetherness. All of you. All 100 of us.
Thank
together.
you, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is what it's all about. Love you guys. All right. Bye, everyone.